Good afternoon, everyone. Looks like we got a big group today. Wow, great. Start off, my name is Patrick Irvin. I'm the Vice President of Defined Learning, and I'm pleased to welcome you all today to the webinar on early STEM exposure through career-focused PBL. But before we begin, now is a good time to review some of the technical aspects of today's presentation. First, if you could check the audio setting on your computer, as well as your speaker volume setting, if you're having any audio trouble. If you're still having any issues, see the audio troubleshooting file that's available in the resource list below the Q&A window. There are also some other icons located at the bottom of the webinar console that will open additional feature panels. Second, you can read about today's speakers in the speaker bio panel and access a resource list to download a copy of today's slides. Third, if you'd like, you could submit a question for our speakers to answer during the Q&A session. So feel free to type them in the Q&A box located above the resource list window. Hopefully there will be time towards the end to answer as many questions as possible. And finally, an archive of today's presentation will be made available online within the next 24 hours. Both the archive and a free download version of the PowerPoint slides will be accessible through edweek.org. Today, we are lucky enough to have two presenters. They are Dr. Gennaro Walters and Felice Hibert from Kankakee School District 111 in Illinois. Our first presenter is Dr. Walters, who currently is the superintendent of the Kankakee School District. Dr. Walters' vision is to develop an educational system that creates opportunities for all children to be valued, contributing citizens in a fast-changing global society. She's committed to the growth and development of lifelong learners and has made it her mission to expose her students to careers as early as possible. And our second presenter today is Felice Hibert, who is currently the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction at Kankakee. Ms. Hibert is dedicated to providing visionary, engaging learning opportunities for all students, families, and staff. Ms. Hibert has more than 20 years of experience in education, and she served as the Director of Curriculum, Principal, Assistant Principal, and a classroom teacher in both special ed and general ed settings. And she's also has the honor of being named a 2018 McCormick Foundation Executive Fellow. So as you saw when you registered for the webinar, we're going to be talking about how educators expose and engage students in STEM learning in the early grades. We will learn how Kankakee shifted from a traditional model to a career-focused, project-based learning model to expose their students to STEM and careers as early as kindergarten. So that's what we're covering today. And again, thank you all for joining us. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Walters to give us an overview of her district and her district's initiatives. So Dr. Walters, take it away and tell us about what you're doing in Kankakee.
So good afternoon. This is Gennaro Walters. I'm the superintendent of Kankakee School District 111. Kankakee is located about an hour south of Chicago, and we have about 5,300 students in kindergarten through 12th grade with about 600 preschoolers. In terms of our diversity, we're extremely diverse, which is one of the things I really like about Kankakee. 48% of our students are African American, 30% Latino, and 20% of our students are white. Over 80% of our students would be considered free and reduced lunch. So I always like to talk a little bit more about the why when I talk to anyone about education, because one of the things that I've learned over the 11 years of being a superintendent, 5 years here in Kankakee, is that educators' mindset is very important in terms of setting up a strong educational system, and that we always need to emphasize our why we do the things we do for students, and we often need to revisit the why. So I'll talk a little bit about my why. There's two experiences that really directed my desire to look at an educational system and redesign and what was happening with students. And it's interesting, my first experience is as a first grader here in Kankakee. I was a product of Kankakee School District 111. I have a sister who is older than me, but considered a student with a disability. And I remember that my parents really struggled with helping her learn how to read, which was very different from the other brothers and sisters because the rest of us learned pretty easily. And so I felt so sorry for my sister and the experience that my family was having at home with going through this process of learning how to read, that I decided one day as a first grader that I was going to do my sister's homework. So I completed her homework, gave it to her, sent her to school, and did not realize that she was in the same school that I was in because we rode different buses. So her teacher came down to me one day and just basically said, "Don't you ever do Joya's homework again." So that was my first memory. Okay, so this educational system, do they really understand what happens to children beyond the walls of the classroom, but beyond the building? The second experience that I remember was as a high school student. One of my friends talked about wanting to be a pediatrician, and she talked about that a lot in my presence. Of course, high school students don't often have a filter. And so what I said to her is, how do you think that you're going to be a pediatrician and you're failing in science? And I thought it was interesting that she did not see the connection between what she was doing in school and what she eventually wanted to be. So when I came into Kankakee as a superintendent, the first thing that I did was to pull 40 stakeholders together, and that was in December of 2015, to talk about what is the vision for the school system here in Kankakee. What do we want to see happen with our students? And with that group of 40 individuals from the community, we decided that we wanted Kankakee to be a progressive, innovative, and creative school district. We wanted to really have strong partnerships. We wanted to increase student achievement, and we wanted to prepare all of our students, regardless of their abilities, their disabilities, or their backgrounds, or their access to resources, to be productive global citizens. And in order to do this, we knew that we needed to expose students to college, career, and life opportunities. We wanted to do this in a way that created a strong learning-centered environment, had accountability for graduation outcomes. And then we knew that we needed to partner outside of the school. We needed to partner with homes, and we needed to partner with local businesses in order to really redesign the educational system in a way that was productive for our local community and that was productive for our students. And so if you were to come to Kankakee today and you were to come into our buildings, particularly our K through 6 buildings, you would find that we have what we've designed in the last 4 years, College Career Academy classes. We've introduced 16 different STEAM career paths to 70% of our kindergarten through 5th grade students, and I'll explain a little bit more why it's 70%. At the high school level, we've introduced competency-based learning model, which we are pushing forward after this year. We started this year with our freshmen. So in the upcoming years, we'll push forward so that by the 4 years, our high school will be entirely competency-based. And then we're also going backwards in terms of supporting our junior high and our lower grades and preparing for the expectations at high school. The wonderful thing is that by starting with College Career Academies in our K through 6 buildings, we've already started to prepare students for that kind of learning model. We've also introduced or increased opportunities for students to be duly enrolled in our community college and in high school. We've also added advanced placement classes. A few of our students had the opportunity to actually take most of their classes at our local community college, Kankakee Community College, and one of those students had the option of graduating from high school and actually having an associate's degree, and she just chose a different path because of her goals in terms of her career. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. One of the things that I really like is that we've increased our partnerships with local businesses, and we have documented over 100 partnerships with local businesses. The supports that our businesses give us now range from swimming lessons to sponsoring software for our students who are bilingual. It also goes all the way to partnering with Define STEM to create curriculum and lessons that expose our older students to career opportunities that are available right here in the community. So now let's talk about the reason why we felt that we needed to redesign our school system. One of the issues that we've had historically, especially during the last, I would say prior to my coming 5 years ago, the last 10, 15 years, is that we were starting to see an increase in low student achievement. 50% of our students in grades 2nd through 9th were not meeting expectations on local assessment. At the high school level, less than 50% of our students were meeting or exceeding on state testing. We had a problem with our graduation rate, and then we also had a problem in terms of the percentage of our students that were ready for college-level material. Because of our struggle with student achievement and student growth, there was a lack of community support. The community didn't have faith in our school system. And as you walk through the buildings, before I came back to the system as a superintendent, you could see very low student engagement. What you would see, particularly with our older students, is a teacher in the front of a classroom. The students, in my mind, were actually pretty compliant. However, they were completely disengaged. One of the things that we did that actually helped design what we needed to do as a school system is that we started meeting with local businesses and partners, youth organizations, community leaders, to talk about what were the expectations for our students in this future workforce. It was interesting because, first of all, I did not know that we had over 3,000 jobs available in our community, because the perception that we had was that there weren't a lot of job opportunities in our community, and we found out that that wasn't true. And most of the reasons that students were not able to get employment were because of soft skills. So our local businesses did not talk about their content area, the reading, the math, science, or social studies. They talked about soft skills. They talked about the ability for students to problem solve, the ability for students to think critically, to be creative, to use their emotional intelligence, to collaborate with their colleagues, to respond to their supervisors in an appropriate way. They really focused on what they had defined as soft skills. So one of the things that we've done at the high school level is we've incorporated as a part of the expectations for students before they graduate to create, to show competencies and habits of success. The other thing that we thought was really important is that the jobs that were available 20 and 30 years ago were no longer available in our community. In fact, it's interesting that our community was like many communities, we're really based on the local industry, the factories. And once those factories started moving out of the community, it's kind of we lost our way. A number of people moved out of the community, and we just kind of became very apathetic in terms of what we were doing, both in the educational system and with the economy. And so what we know now is that our students really need to be exposed to opportunities related to STEM. That the research shows that our students are going to perform better in math and science if they're exposed earlier. So one of the things that we thought was really important is that we start exposing our students to math and science opportunities, to jobs in the STEM area as early as kindergarten and even as early as preschool, just at a different level. If you think about good to great, we want our hedgehog concept to be student engagement. It's really important to us that students not only take ownership of their learning, but they actually understand why what they're doing in the classroom now relates to their career goals and their aspirations in their future. And so we're explicitly making connections between today and the future for many of our children. So now let's talk about the transformation and what it looks like. Beginning early in 2014, I actually started as a superintendent in May of 2014 in Kankakee. I was actually named in February. The advantage I had as an incoming superintendent is that I grew up in the area. I attended school in Kankakee, graduated from Kankakee High School, so I understood the way the system was designed. We had we had magnet classes. Magnet classes could include fine arts magnet, Montessori magnet, science magnet, dual language magnet, and we have a number of other magnet programs. Then you had our gifted program that started at third grade that was basically based on testing. Then you had your general ed classrooms, which were the other classrooms. And literally, students that were in the general ed classrooms were students that either lost the lottery to get into the magnet classrooms or didn't understand or know about the process of getting into magnet. So when I looked at our student achievement data, our students that are in magnet and gifted were at or above the state average in terms of their test scores. Our students that were in the general ed classrooms were significantly below the state average. So the first thing that I knew I would have to do is reframe and redesign what was happening in the general ed classrooms, kindergarten through sixth grade. So we started by renaming those classrooms college and career academy classrooms. Then we took the career wheel and we gave each grade level a particular focus. In kindergarten, it was really important that we focus on human services, in my mind, because those human services jobs were those right there, we understand it's a part of our community, careers that most kindergartners would understand. Then we went all the way to the more technical jobs for our fifth graders. Starting in sixth grade, our students take an inventory where they are exploring and talking about their interests so that they can identify a particular career strand and jobs within that career strand that they would be interested in. Beginning this year, we've expanded our College Career Academy from kindergarten through sixth grade to kindergarten through eighth grade. So as sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, our students are exploring and making connections between the content and what they want to do long term based on their individual profile in their career inventory. The other thing that with our partnerships with our local businesses, we've collaborated closely with the Kankakee Economic Alliance, the Chamber of Commerce, Illinois Jobs for American Grads, CSL Bearing, and Nucor Steel. So the next steps for Kankakee School District 111 is that with the partnership with Kankakee and Define STEM and currently two local businesses, we want to design actual lessons and projects around job opportunities that will be available for our students in the local community. So these are jobs that are available now or in the future that our students could come out of high school and be eligible to apply for these jobs, or it would tell us exactly what kind of schooling they would need to be eligible for the jobs or what degrees they would need to come back into the community and take these jobs. We want to, over the next 4 or 5 years, systematically add local business partners to that curriculum so that by the time a student graduates from high school, they're not only exposed to our global opportunities or our national opportunities, but also opportunities that are available right here in our community. There's also a push to make sure that our students have competencies, that not only are they getting the certain grades, and grades don't reflect learning, but they also have the skills that are necessary to be successful post-secondary. And so that with a combination of all of the changes, we're hoping that students by their junior and senior year have really focused on what career opportunities they're interested in, and they understand exactly what skill sets, both soft skills and academic skills, they need to be successful in those careers.
Good afternoon. This is Felice Hybert. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction in Kankakee, and I'm excited to share our journey with you. I'd like to talk a little bit about my why. So I have a strong early childhood background. I've done a lot of work in training in project-based learning from an early childhood perspective, and I've also had a lot of training and development in Reggio, the Reggio approach, which is also another preschool approach from Reggio Emilia in Italy. And so it's always been my passion to empower teachers and also students to really have a growth mindset and to be innovative. I'm really an advocate for empowering teachers and supporting teachers to be able to give up some of that control and compliance that Dr. Walters talked about earlier, and to allow students to show you what they can actually do, sometimes unintentionally through a pre-planned curriculum. We set limits on what our students can do, and our students don't live up to those high expectations. They're just kind of giving us what the basic information that they think we want. I also think it's important as administrators to support teachers and students in being innovative and modeling those innovative practices, modeling the risk-taking, constantly reflecting on what you can do better as an instructional leader to model for your staff. As we're sitting here and talking, I'm just thinking about, as Dr. Walters mentioned, we have a habits of success skills. And one of those habits of success skills is presentations. And I'm thinking to myself now, I should have had that rubric in front of me with the presentations and kind of looked at that as those skills as we're doing this. But in retrospect, I'm going to go back and re-listen to this and grade myself on those skills so I can continually perfect my craft. I'm really excited, like I said, to share with you how we actually started to make these shifts. And the first step is really, as Dr. Walters said, schools were designed, to supply factory workers. And factories, have closed and moved on, but yet schools are still in that mindset of developing students to be compliant, to move when the bell rings, to sit and do something and then break for lunch or break for recess and then come back and do the same thing. And so really one of the first steps that we did was talk to people in businesses and industries. Talk to the people in businesses and industries in your community. Find out what skills they're looking for. Find out what jobs and careers actually look like now. In education, we kind of stay in this education silo, and we don't get out and see what's actually happening in the world all around us in other careers. That's a really important paradigm shift to start this work. Another great step is have your businesses come in, talk with your instructional leaders, talk with your staff, talk with students and families about what they need in their businesses. Schools do a really good job, traditionally schools do a really good job of asking businesses what they can do for schools, but we need to kind of flip that switch and ask ourselves, what can we do for the business and the community? That's really important. As we start in this work, we had a presenter come out and talking about traditional learning, and he had mentioned that if an alien were to be dropped into the middle of our high school at the time, that the alien would think that we're training everyone to be college professors, right? If you think back to a traditional high school, it was very lecture-oriented. Kids were sitting in classrooms, not really actively engaged in any kind of projects. Now you take that same theory and you look at a preschool classroom, right? A preschool classroom is all active learning. They're all engaged. There's lots of questions. There's inquiry learning. So for me, with an early childhood background, I wanted to say, how can we capture that hope and wonder that happens naturally in a preschool classroom and continue to develop that all the way up through a high school. And so that's where we kind of started to look at this problem-based model, really looking at how do we ensure that students have these skills beginning at a young age. Using problem-based learning, it gives students a deeper understanding. It provides a lot of opportunities for that real-world knowledge. We want to make sure that we give all of our students an opportunity to apply what they've learned. We talk a lot in our district about being able to show mastery in multiple ways in multiple times. It's not about the one and done. It's not just about, the unit test or the chapter test, or in high school being able to pass the final. We really want to move beyond that to the actual application of that learning. How do you apply that skill? And also looking at not only the content, but what in Illinois we call it adaptive skills. We're looking at those 21st century skills. All of those other skills that build a balanced learner, not only in the school system, but then out in the community as well. When we were looking at our curriculum and instruction, like I said before, I think it's important at the elementary level to move back to what is developmentally appropriate. I think that with a lot of the political shifts that have happened in the past 20 years, we got away from what was developmentally appropriate. We got away from what we know brain science tells us is best for young children. And using problem-based learning and inquiry-based learning, it really does open up a window to get back to what we know works best for students. Students hands-on, minds-on, actively engaged in a lot of different opportunities and projects. In Kankakee, when we looked at this, I'm sure you can hear it in my voice and in Dr. Walter's voice. We talk a lot about design, and we really have moved to a designer's mindset. And with our design, we had 4 principles that we used, and it was hope, wonder, community, and history. And so everything that we do in this redesign, whether it's looking at the classroom environment, whether it's looking at curriculum, whether it's looking at materials, we always want to make sure that hope, wonder, community, and history is incorporated into what we're doing. Another big piece is also moving from teachers as facilitators to activators. I've always felt that a teacher as a facilitator doesn't give enough justice to the hard work that teachers do every day. Teachers are really there to activate students to do something. I talk to our staff a lot about making sure that we're not working harder than our students. Our students should be working harder than us. And in many times that's not the case. And so we need to make sure that we're activating students to do something. That helps with their own growth mindset. That helps students to be reflective. We want students to have that agency of their own learning. And it starts at a really young age. We've also, like we mentioned before, performance tasks, providing opportunities to connect that content to meaningful application. And also moving away from that, I'm just writing curriculum or I'm just planning curriculum, to really designing. You're designing something. It's not just about going through the motions. We're not at a direct instruction level. You really are designing something that you're passionate about, that you're creative, that also mimics what your students are passionate about and what your students are excited about. So when we looked at some of our resources, we talked a lot about our return on investment. So, we're spending a lot of money on curriculum materials. We're spending a lot of money on, sit and get training. We're spending a lot of money having experts from across the country come in and talk to our staff, at a Teacher Institute day. But was that really impacting student achievement? And when we looked at the data was no. And so we needed to redesign something that really helped our teachers and our staff have that collective efficacy. It empowered our teachers and our staff to know that they're the experts and that they have the power to really impact student achievement. It's nothing that somebody from the outside can bring in. The power is with us all the time. I kind of think about Dorothy in the red sparkly shoes where she clicked her heels. We've always had the power. We just have given that up in so many ways. So in our district, we looked at micro-credentialing. So we thought about, instead of having outside people come in, what about if we empower our teachers to give professional development, to develop courses around things that they know and that they're passionate about? We also have utilized what I know from my work with Define STEM into performance tasks. So our typical staff PD is no longer just a sit and get, but then you go back and you apply what you've learned. You come back and you talk about it. You get feedback. You make revisions to that. Using our Define STEM module, there's a PD Define STEM module that we used around performance tasks. And teachers that completed that got a certificate of accomplishment, a digital badge, and they also became the experts within our district. So if you want to know more about Define STEM, if you want to get more information on performance tasks, these are the identified teachers in the district that can help you with that. Again, those real-world performance tasks, that was a big paradigm shift for us. So moving away from, like I said, chapter test or end-of-unit test or that paper and pencil multiple choice, there are multiple choice ways that students could demonstrate what they know. Now we're looking into those performance tasks. And so we want to make sure that within Define STEM, it gives us the opportunity to use those performance tasks. And what we like about the performance tasks in Define STEM is that it provides differentiation. So if you're not comfortable with creating your own performance tasks, you can go on in the system, click on a career strand, you can click on some standards and some performance tasks, and activities will show up. As you become more comfortable, you could go into the system yourself and you can edit those tasks. You can edit the rubric. It's customizable, so you can do a lot of differentiation within Define STEM based on your own comfort level with the system. I always like to say that we're elevating best practice in education to next practice. So I know there was a question earlier about how could we measure those 21st century skills, those critical skills, adaptive skills, habits of success. They're known by many names across the country. But this is an example within Define STEM where a teacher can rate those skills on a completion of a task or project, or you could also have a learner self-assess those skills. Again, really empowering both the teacher and the student to be able to self-reflect and make those revisions as they go on. One of the I guess the hook for me with the performance tasks in Define STEM is that there is not just one product. There's a variety of products that students are able to choose in order to demonstrate their learning. So I might not be a learner who likes to be creative and put something down on paper, but I might like to be a learner that could design a website to show my knowledge. And Define STEM gives you that flexibility. And again, it can be differentiated too. So if you're not comfortable as an educator giving up that control yet, you could just assign a product. And then as you get more comfortable, you can kind of do that gradual release of responsibility and let students choose. So like I mentioned before, I've always been an advocate on creating learning environments that really match and reflect what we want teaching and learning to look like, sound like, feel like in our district. And there's a story that I use a lot when, if your grandmother can come into your school and know exactly what to do, we need to do some changing. And so that story ended up ringing true because in our district we were able to redesign the architecture of the building and the architecture of the classroom spaces as well. And a lot of our school hadn't been touched since, the 1950s. And so it was interesting to see how that that rang true. And so when we were redesigning our spaces, we wanted to make sure that we included that flexibility of what our community business partners and our industries, what their spaces look like as well. And so here's a picture of a kind of a traditional high school classroom. And then here's a picture of what one of our classrooms looks like now. And again, I'm going to go back to those design principles, the hope, the wonder, the community, the history, that should all be reflected within the space. What was interesting is as we were going through this webinar and looking at these pictures, Dr. Walters had said, is that actually one of our classrooms? Because it looks so different than what our traditional classrooms have looked like for so long. And yes, that's actually a classroom in Kankakee High School. Here's another picture that I think demonstrates just that shift that we've made. This is, again, one of our high school classrooms, and you can see that the students are there and they're engaged, and that's not the teacher that's sitting there. That's actually one of our community business partners who's coming in and working with a group of students as a mentor on a business idea that they have. So I would like to just introduce a quick video about our students and what problem-based learning looks like, sounds like, feels like in our district.
So here's what we're going to do right now.
One of the things we learned about the Define STEM is it's a problem-based way of learning science, technology, using engineering and math. You have a problem in front of you you have to figure out. You do the research, you report out on it, and it seems to grab the attention of the students better when you do it that way.
The Define STEM, the way they have projects set up, has helped to kind of springboard whatever learning is going to be taking place. So we watch the video to kind of gain interest and give them an idea what they're doing for the project, and then we are using the different reading opportunities within the program and some of the project ideas that they've given us. So it's been a good way to make the units cohesive and to get students interested really right away. We're working on the MagLab project, and we kind of springboarded from that, and right now we're doing the science portion. So they've talked about magnetism, they've talked about friction. Today's a friction experiment.
3, 2, 1, lift!
They're creating a slide, and they're testing different objects on the slide to see which ones go the furthest or the fastest, depending on how much friction each object has.
Go! Sandpaper one.
Have one person pull the video up on their Chromebook and watch it together. You're then going to make a comment about the video onto the Google Classroom, okay?
One of the things I really liked about Define STEM, different than other programs, is the documents you can not only just download, but you can edit. So you can change it so it specifically meets the needs.
Janera Walters, I'm back, and I just want to talk a little bit more about the design principles that Felice mentioned. We had the opportunity to attend a learning conference at Harvard that focused on redesigning learning environments. And what's really exciting about attending this conference, I think it's almost 3 years ago, is that at that conference, we started with what we wanted to happen in terms of instruction. We talked about that. Then we created our design principles, which as was mentioned is community, history, hope, and wonder. And then we created what we wanted the classrooms to look like. And that was in a 3 or 4 day conference. From there, working with our architects, we continued to really hone in on what do we want to happen in terms of instruction and how do you design the space to support what we wanted to happen in terms of instruction. So community, we wanted to make sure that we designed a space that welcomed the community to be a part of our learning opportunities. History, we wanted to respect the history of Kankakee. We're a very proud community, and we wanted to make sure that we respected that and respected our history. Hope, we wanted our students to come into the space and feel like there was hope for their future. And wonder, we wanted our students to come into the space and wonder what would happen in the space. So it was exciting to look at this presentation and knowing that that first traditional slide was pulled off the internet. And then when I looked at the second slide, I thought, oh, that looks like it was pulled off the internet also, but it wasn't. That was actually one of our classrooms. It was not pulled off the internet. That was exciting to see. The other thing that I want to emphasize is that I grew up in Kankakee and graduated from Kankakee High School. So for the first time in years, I walk into the high school and I don't recognize it. So my mother, my older brothers and sisters that also graduated from either that high school or the previous high school, which was Westview, but the same building, would not recognize the building as they walked into it. And that is very important because the things that we were learning in order to have job opportunities that were available to us are very different from what my son, who is a 7th grader here in Kankakee, will need to learn to have opportunities for him. So what has all of this redesigning and really reforming and looking at our educational system in a different way, what has that done for us? One of the things that we've seen is an increase in student achievement. Now, it's not where we want it to be. We do have a long way to go. There has been a significant increase in the graduation rate, but we also want to see a significant increase in the actual skills and the competencies of our students. There is growth, and we're happy about that, but we also know that we have a long way to go. The other exciting thing is when I came into the district in 2014, we were considered a low-performing district. So there were a lot of supports that the state provided us in order to come out of that low-performing status. Well, currently we have no low-performing schools. We have 3 schools that are considered underachieving, which there are very specific areas that they need to work on. And then we have most of our schools are considered commendable. Again, we still have a long way to go, but the exciting thing about that is the only way that we could be considered commendable is if we're demonstrating student growth. The other thing that we're really focusing on is that this isn't just about an achievement gap. This is about opportunity gap. And we want to create opportunities for our students in the school setting that they may not necessarily have in the community or in their homes. They may have them, but we don't want to leave those opportunities to chance. So we're trying to close an opportunity gap. We want to make sure that we are creating opportunities for students to take care of themselves, to be productive global citizens. We want them to be able to take care of themselves and eventually their children, and eventually their children's children, and we want them to eventually take care of their children's children's children. So we are looking at this as really redesigning not only the school system, but the community. This is hope for not only our students individually, but this is hope for our community. With my experience as a Kankakeean, this is not just an educational job, like I want to be successful in my job. I want to impact the future of our community because this has been a great place for me to grow up, and I want it to be a great place for my son. And if he decides to stay in Kankakee, I want it to be a great place for his children. So we are seeing an impact of what we're doing. We know that student engagement and project-based learning is so important for the future of our children and their community. And we're happy to say that we have literally in our data seeing the impact of starting that redesign and continuing to push forward to make opportunities available for all of our children. Thank you.
Wow, that was great. Dr. Walters, Felice, thank you so much for telling us the story of Kankakee. I think our audience, I know I did, we got some great insights about how you're approaching education, your students, and your community. And I think that's great. Before I move on to talk a little bit about Define STEM, I want to pause here and take a few questions. We have a lot of questions here. So I think the first one will be from Kathleen, and I'll throw this out to Dr. Walters. What kind of training and support did you give to your teachers, and how did they learn about PBL, planning effective PBL lessons, and reflecting on their progress?
So I already had the vision of redesigning what needed to happen in the classroom. What's interesting is that I knew that some of our teachers would understand it and be able to take off, but the majority of our teachers would need a lot of very concrete support. And so that was why we partnered with Define STEM. So Define STEM has the platform. It has all of the information and materials and supports that a teacher would need if they have to start from ground zero. It also connects the projects to actual careers that are available for our students globally. But it also helps the teachers to design the lessons for the students. And so we had training with Define STEM. We made sure that we had early adopters begin to refine their craft and their understanding of Define defined STEM activities, and then we started to create kind of early adopters and a community of people that could help those teachers who are struggling. So it was not only just professional development in a kind of a small individual basis, it was also creating supports in the buildings of people that were doing well with project-based learning and can help their colleagues.
Great, thank you. The next question is coming from Leslie. Felice, if you could answer this. She's asking, what resources are needed for PBL teaching and learning to be successful long-term?
Hello. So that's a great question. I think that in terms of resources, I think that the biggest resource that you need is just that the mindset piece, right? You have to have the mindset to be flexible and innovative. It's not really about purchasing any sort of certain materials or programs, but it really is just about being open to having students be active learners. I know when we were looking at doing a summer school program using the Defined STEM model, and we talked about, should we have these materials kind of pre-planned? Should we get these, should we make kits based on some of these performance tasks? And our contact at Defined STEM really advised against that. She said it would be much better and more advantageous for you just to get a whole bunch of open-ended materials so that students can use whatever they wanted to create something. Again, if you have a project and you only have a couple of things available, your creativity is stymied by that. So again, I have a strong background in early childhood education. I say if you want to look at those resources, look at your preschool classrooms. They are filled with a lot of open-ended materials, a lot of choice, a lot of student agency, and really try to mimic that same design at any grade level.
Right. And to dovetail that, Felice, Courtney asks, I'm hoping to learn how you implemented inquiry into this PBL program.
Hello, that's a great question, Courtney. So inquiry-based learning, has been around for a long time. I always say nothing in education, changes. We just need to make sure that we elevate best practice into next practice. So when we're looking at that inquiry-based learning, modeling that ourselves as the building leaders, as the instructional leaders. So instead of, just presenting information, framing it with an open-ended question, how do you know about this? And letting, your staff, your colleagues, families, students kind of answer those questions. Starting with an open-ended question or putting, if you're at a staff meeting, if you are working, with teachers in your building, just putting open-ended materials on the table and having them discover for themselves what that is and the joy and the happiness that ensues when you're creating something. That would be my recommended first step. The other piece is at our junior high, we looked at actually an IB program. So that's a very inquiry-based program. And a lot of our AP courses, they're very inquiry-based. So we're really looking to replicate that high student engagement that we see when students are actively wondering about something and researching. There's another resource that I would use. I think it's called Soul Start or Start Soul. I can put it maybe in the notes later, but that's a really great way just to kind of venture into that space and try it, see how it works, and then you continually refine your feedback to that.
Great, and I think this next question also follows up to Courtney's. This is from Chris. He asks, how does the reporting look different than a traditional outcome-based report card would look?
Okay. Chris, that's another really great question. So we've done a lot of redesigning with our report card, and especially with our move to competency-based education. But what we found is that especially at the high school level, our kind of local reporting looks a lot different, where it looks almost like think about a gaming system. So you have to kind of level up, and there's a bar that kind of shows your progress towards this mastery, and you know exactly what you need to do in order to level up to the next skill. That's what our local piece looks like. In terms of what our report card looks like, we do convert everything into a more traditional report card, especially at the high school level, in terms of giving that to colleges, universities, students looking for scholarships. We're not in this space yet in Illinois or really across the nation to look at a different report card. There is some work going on with a couple of different organizations and a couple of different high schools across the nation that are actually working with some of the higher institutions to come up with a report card that more accurately demonstrates this type of learning. But for us, we found it's just easier right now just to convert it back to a traditional report card.
Oh, that's great. Let's see, the next question. Dr. Walters, this comes in from Nancy. Could you go a little deeper on what community partnerships are essential to support relevance and bringing in mentors?
So I would answer that question by saying as many as possible. And the reason I answered that question that way is because there are a number of things that we didn't necessarily think that a community partner could bring to the table. So, for example, we have a number of bankers. We have a couple of hospitals in our area. And then we thought, so we partner with this bank, like what is the difference in partnering with this bank versus that bank in terms of just kind of financial literacy, for example. But what we found is by having multiple partners and inviting as many partners as possible, sometimes it wasn't about what we thought that they could offer us. Sometimes it was about what they could offer us. So, for example, we're now part of Illinois Jobs for American Grads. It was the president of one of our local banks introduced Iowa Jobs for American Grads because his brother was a part of Jobs for American Grads in Tennessee. So he made that connection with us. And now 2 years later, we're actually participating in Illinois Jobs for American Grads. But it was because one of our community partners had an idea that actually came from a personal experience and brought it to the school system. The other example is that we had another bank actually sponsor our local YMCA on swimming lessons for second graders because what they believed is that we're so close to the Kankakee River, and that there's a number of students, especially during the summer, not always from our community, that have drowned. They felt strongly that our students needed to learn how to swim. And so then they came to us offering a partnership of sponsoring swim lessons for our second graders through the local YMCA. So sometimes you can identify quickly these are the businesses that we need to partner with because they have so many jobs available and so many unfilled vacancies that we definitely need to partner with them. But what I have found is partner with as many community organizations as possible because sometimes it's not necessarily what we think they can offer, but it's sometimes things that they can offer that we haven't thought of.
Great, thank you. We're running a little short on time. I have one more question that I'd really like Dr. Walters for you to answer from Barbara. She says, I am especially interested in hearing about what changes the district leaders made in their own behavior and expectations to improve STEM, and also to hear them discuss how much of this change was about logistics and schedule versus philosophical shifts. Both are important, but what was the balance?
So I'm just going to just say simply, you have to start with the philosophical shifts. You have to start with the mindset you have to start with paradigm shift. Because if your leaders don't understand the shift in the philosophy and the paradigm, all of the decisions they make under that will actually align with a traditional system rather than a competency-based system or a non-traditional system. So we have done a lot of work with when an administrator makes a decision, asking them, does that align with this philosophy versus this philosophy? And we're still working on that because sometimes our more veteran administrators get pulled back into a traditional model.
That's That's great. Yeah, I think that's about all the time we have right now for questions, and I want to thank everyone for submitting. But because we're running low on time, we're going to provide, as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, we're going to provide the unanswered questions back that we can, as well as links to this presentation and a video of the presentation along with those slides. I wanted to take, and thank you very much, Dr. Walters and Felice. This was great. Thank you for your time today. But to close, I kind of want to talk real briefly about Define STEM. At Define STEM is a K through 12 project-based learning solution that provides engaging, authentic lessons built around careers. Our cross-curricular projects provide opportunities to students to deepen understanding and allow them to apply their knowledge in real-world scenarios. When we designed Define STEM to enhance core curriculum and save teachers time by providing everything teachers are going to need to implement and assess high-quality, standards-aligned performance tasks, provide engaging videos, research resources, and recently we launched a portfolio manager and a lot more. Define STEM's framework is built upon the Understanding by Design model from Jay McTighe and Grant Wiggins, and this framework provides teachers a planning process and an implementation process for providing effective performance tasks. Each one of our tasks starts with a real-world video that shows the practical application of STEM concepts within a company or industry. We have interviews ranging from agriculturalists to architects, drummers to data scientists, and dozens more. After the video, though, we ask teachers and students to conduct a performance task following that UBD, or what they call the GRASP model within the Understanding by Design framework. The GRASP model, we present the students with GRASP, which stands for Goal, Role, Audience, Situation, and Product. The goal, the teacher starts out the project by presenting the goal or the big idea of the project. The role is the role that the student is given in a specific job or career that exists in the real world. A is the audience. The students are told who their audience is, who they'll be working for, who they'll be presenting to. And the situation, which the students are given a problem that they must solve. And finally, there's P, which is product or performance. And students will be creating this product or performance that's going to solve the problem and give the evidence of their understanding. And Define STEM creates excitement about STEM career opportunities and empowers students to build 21st century skills, and that will provide a pathway to a promising future. I just want to thank everybody again, Felice, Dr. Walters, everyone in attendance, and everyone who asked questions. So thank you, and I hope you have an excellent remainder of your day.